What is up, PGA fans? We are back, and we are heading to Mexico. We are going to the Mayakoba Championship. As always, I'm here with my trusted co-hosts, Sia Najad and Spencer Aguiar, and we have a special guest tonight. PGA Tout came to join us for the show, giving his plays. We're giving you all the aces. We brought the full foursome, so no randoms getting assigned to us this week. We are bringing you the picks, and we're going to win some money this week. So let's start. John, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thank you guys for having me on. It is a pleasure to be in this box between you all. I'm excited to talk Mayakoba. I am repping Mayakoba today. 3 months, I think, removed from playing. So I'm sure I played in exactly the same PGA Tour conditions that they'll be playing in this week. And I have no doubt that my experience will be translatable to what some of the players see this week. So I am excited to talk through it with you fellas.
I love it. And as you all know, that's just the type of detail we like to provide on this show is we prefer to play the course before we give you insight into it. Yeah. So, of course, it was an easy pick for John this week, knowing he had played the course just within 3 months ago and is going to be able to give us all the details of every hole. I'm sure he probably would have beat half the field anyway, but they didn't invite him for some weird reason. I don't get that. But anyway, Sia, how you doing tonight?
Joel, I'm doing well. I'm actually really excited to have John on here. John, how do you pronounce your last name, by the way?
Hasselbauer.
Wrong. It's actually pronounced Tout. Okay, so that's the first question that you've already gotten wrong. So that's a good prelude to what I'm going to do in this show. I'm just going to be a complete menace, and I'm going to, instead of giving you analysis on the golfers, which I'll do a little bit, Joel, this is probably a surprise to you, but I'm just going to pepper John with questions because I honestly think he's such a big guy in this industry. He won't say that, but I will. And I feel like nobody knows about him really because he's not on a lot of shows. So I think I'm just going to use my time with the four of us. Like, we don't need 4 analysts today, do we? Right. So my time is just going to be spent getting to know John. And then you guys can do, the golf bit, if you will.
And John, in case you need it, just give me a safe word. So if it becomes too much, I'll make sure I get him off your back.
Listen, I'm ready. I'm ready for any.
All right.
You guys, I feel like I'm getting hazed in my debut, but I'm ready for it.
I gave you a chance. Can't say I didn't warn you. Spence, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well also. I got to meet John a little bit better on my show. I do be the number yesterday. So once again, John, thank you for coming on that. And I'm looking forward to this today with all of us.
I'm looking forward to it too. I think we have a great opportunity this week to make some money. I think, it's time. We needed a full field again. We've had a few of these JV tournaments with some of these no-name guys. And, we're back this week. We got, a full field, but we got a lot of the big names back. And I think it's going to be more normal in terms of handicapping and things like that. So before we dive into things, let's start on the course breakdown like we always do. Spencer, as always, since you are the resident most detailed breakdown of a course we've ever seen, why don't you kick us off? What are you looking at for the course this week in Mexico?
Yeah, so the best way to describe El Chameleon Golf Course would be as an exposed oceanside track that features jungle terrain and swampland. That's a unique mixture since you get 3 different textures with that description, but golfers will need to traverse various hazards, including those of the architectural variety. There are very few locations on the PGA Tour where distance doesn't hold an advantage over precision, but nearly 65% of all top 10 finishers during the previous 8 years have been shorter than average off the tee. It's not to say that distance is a negative, but accuracy players will see a boost. One of the reasons for that has to do with players clubbing down to avoid the plethora of hazards that come into play. The rough is virtually non-existent, but the misses do compound. If you go wayward to one side, you may be put in the jungle. On the other, you might find yourself in the water, and all of that needs to be maneuvered as you're worried about the wind that comes in off the coast. Scoring tends to be easy for those that hoist the title, but this track isn't a given. That point gets enhanced when we dive a little deeper into the actual metrics, as El Chameleon ranks near the top 10 on tour every season in birdie or better percentage and double bogey or worse rate. Mistakes will be made when balls get sprayed, and golfers can start to feel as if they are trapped in a tiny bubble once things begin to go wrong. The greens typically register between a 10 to 11 on the stimp meter, which is extremely slow, and we receive that setup so the surface doesn't get away from the grounds crew if the winds do play a factor. Overall, golfers that can find fairways off the tee and pinpoint their irons from a shorter proximity range should be at an advantage, and the ability to play on a slow surface should only help matters. I talked with John on my Be the Number podcast yesterday about these types of tournaments where, I haven't heard what you guys are going to say yet, but overall, from a consensus level in the industry, I think all of us are saying the same things. As everyone knows, I'm always attempting to change my model away from the consensus with how in-depth I get in breaking down the variables. But for as great as it is to have metrics that are easily quantifiable for betting, even without Stat Tracker, it does add a wrinkle to the equation in DFS. Ownership clearly plays a heavy factor in decision-making, and I find it to be a hard week with 7 of my top 10 players ranking inside the top 10 in ownership. It doesn't mean we can't find ways to separate from the pack, but it's going to be difficult to avoid some of these chalky selections. I like when my model is predicting negative EV outcomes for some of the most popular plays, and that's just not the case this week with only 4 golfers inside the top 20 on DraftKings pricing, ranking more than 10 spots away from what I have as proper. For reference sake, those plays are Taylor Gooch, Adam Long, who has the best course history at this event without a win, Patrick Rogers, and Pat Perez, another golfer that has been stellar here, providing 3 top 8 finishes over his last 5 years. But I still made myself unique in different ways. So I didn't weigh any course history in the mix. From an overall weight of my model, it was 70% stats, 30% current form. I started with weighted ball striking for 25%. That's the PGA Tour's definition of the stat. I took 90% accuracy and mixed it with 10% distance. The 90% came from a combination of accuracy and fairways gained. I've never had that large of a discrepancy before in a model, but as John mentioned yesterday, that idea is pretty standard when you look at a site like Golf Data. Their chart was about as far pulled towards accuracy as it could be. I then took 75% of that total and mixed it with 25% GIR. So it's ball striking on the surface, but it's mostly an influx of accuracy and a secondary weight of GIR to keep the category a little different from the industry. I've weighted proximity for 15%. I like to get more precise than I was able to there, but the lack of strokes gained data made it difficult to project out where approach shots would come from. I did try to create a different proximity total that would be closer to mimicking this week's property, which led me to including 60% of my total from 0 to 150 yards. The rest was scattered from there. In retrospect, you probably could go heavier than I did in the short proximity ranges, but I wanted to include some other of those zones to account for the par 5s. That led me into par 5 birdie or better for 12.5%. These are reachable in 2 shots and have been the number 1 decider between the 3 par totals in figuring out top 10 finishers. Weighted scoring for 10%, 70-30 split of birdie or better over bogey avoidance. As I noted, this is a venue that is inside the top 10 in both birdie or better percentage and double bogey or worse rate. Weighted par 4 for 15%. These are going to be your most challenging holes, so I did come back on with adding a little bit more bogey avoidance into general par 4 scoring. 12.5% on a weighted category of slow to average greens. That's 70% on strokes gained total and 30% on slower surfaces. And then I wrapped it up with 10% on strokes gained total at under 7,200 yards. That's one of my favorite stats to use when it's correctly measurable. There's something to be said about how certain golfers perform better when they are required to take driver out of the bag. So just really quickly to wrap that up, when I ran that model, the top 5 for me was Thomas, Answer, Hovland, Tringali, and Mito. When I ran it for upside, Answer, Mito, Hovland, Tringali, and Thomas. Pretty similar for both, but as you can see, I'm kind of caught right in that middle zone of the chalk there.
I love it. Thanks for simplifying that down this week and really kind of shortening it because I know. No, I'm just joking. But listen, this is like a lot of people don't run models. So if you can get all this information, kind of understand where some of the advanced metrics come from, and some of the people who run some of this stuff or what are they looking at really does give you an edge week to week. Did Spencer miss anything that you're looking at?
Oh, he certainly didn't miss anything. I mean, this is why Spencer should be going first on this, right? Because his is so comprehensive. And for those of you that model, I think a problem with modeling sometimes is we mimic other people's models. And when I say we, I'm actually excluding Spencer from this. John, I don't know if and how you model, so I'm not speaking for you either. But the point is we find out that driving accuracy is really important. Then we're going to put a certain percentage on approach because that's just what people are inclined to do. And then we might minimize putting here, and John might tell us about why we might do that. And so it ends up being like this percentages are almost like not identical, but they're very similar. So what I love about Spencer's is his is so it's so granular, it's so micro that, and he's just so educated on this, just course to course, that like you potentially are finding an edge that 90% of the people doing this just don't have, because of how far Spencer is digging through. So I love it. You know, I'm not going to add much to what he said. I mean, obviously, I think we know there's certain sort of benchmarks here. Most of us have probably read PGA Tout's article. I'm going to call you PGA Tout. Do I call you John? I don't even know what to do. John, what's the answer to that question?
I feel like now that we've broken the ice, it's John.
It's John.
I feel like we've cleared a threshold.
We have. So yeah, I'll end right there. But that's what I'm looking at.
I would also say, if you call me PGA Tout, we have to call Spencer Tee Off Sports, and we have to call Joel Draft Master Flex. We have to keep it consistent.
That's true, but like nobody knows. It's funny though, because like nobody knows you as John, right? Like they just know you as PGA Tout.
I mean, I like to think that outside of this Twitter bubble, that the former is true.
Oh, I'm sorry, John, but nothing exists outside of this Twitter bubble.
So your friends and family, they don't call you PGA Tout?
Now they do. No, you're right. Everything's swirling.
That's what I figured. Yeah,
it's all chaos here. I wear many hats, not just this one.
Well, listen, John, you actually played the course. So what did you get from experience on the course that you think might be a factor here this week?
Yeah, really reassuring when I saw the data golf stuff that Spencer was just talking about, because I walked off this course and I was like, wow, that was not forgiving at all off the tee. I don't know like how often you guys play or like play on vacation, but I had this great anxiety that I was going to run out of balls. Because I only had 2 sleeves, so I had 6 total balls. I hit what I thought was a pretty good tee shot on one, and it could not be found. It was a baby cut that may have actually been a slice, and I couldn't find. I refuse to say that I hit it out of bounds. It was one of those where like I think I lost the ball, I think somebody could not locate my ball because it's not a lost ball. But I lost my first tee shot. And then I hit my second tee shot into the trees. That was an actual slice. And then the next hole was like a clear, you got to lay up on this hole. There's like water everywhere. And it's like 350 yards. There's absolutely no point to hit driver. But I don't do that. And so I hit driver good, but through the fairway. So I lost 3 balls on my first 4 holes, I think. And I was down to 1 sleeve for the rest of the round. So that was nerve wracking. That was me putting pressure on myself.
Did you maintain or did you lose the other 3 balls?
So what ended up happening was we would drive past like a creek or a canal, and I would stop the cart and like fish around. Like I have to find some golf balls. So there was at one point where I was playing like a souvenir golf ball. It was like a Jack Nicklaus, like plastic ball almost. And I was like, I don't want to, because I had 3 balls that came with my bag. And then a sleeve that I bought of like Mayakoba souvenir balls. So I was like, I really don't want to lose these because I'd like to go home with them. And I immediately had to play them like way sooner than I thought. So I was on damage control mode early. But I think once I don't know if it was nerves or just like I was playing with rentals and I was trying to figure it out. I got into a little bit of a groove. And once you hit fairways here, it's not a difficult course. So my overarching impression as I left this place was I probably should have laid up more. And if you're not somebody who's capable of hitting fairways, this place is a nightmare and you're going to get double bogeys. You're going to hit it out of bounds. And then I went to data golf and that was true. It is like the most severe, literal off the charts importance on driving accuracy that exists. So nice validation, like can definitely confirm if you're playing out of the fairway, it's a super easy course. You should be able to get to 20 under if your game is on, and if the weather's not acting up. There was not a lot of weather while I was there. It rained the day before, but it was like overcast, so weather wasn't a factor. It's very guarded by trees. It's like you said, it's in the jungle. There's a lot of like pictures of it on the beach. There's maybe 2 holes where you see the water, like the ocean. For the most part, this is like a jungle course. It's surrounded by trees. I think back to like if you guys watched the Olympics at Kissimmee Giseki, like when Xander was swinging through jungle brushes, like we might see some of that here. And if we do, I learned thanks to Twitter that the indigenous animal here is called the kudamundi, which I described in my article as an anteater sloth monkey combination. because I didn't know what to call it, but it actually has a name. It's a Coatimundi. So be on the lookout for those. I don't know if there's like an over-under prop if we see any Coatimundis out there, but that is something that I will be looking for.
Are they Mexican raccoons? Because we have Isaiah in here. It says, tell us the story of the Mexican raccoons. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, they go by many names.
Okay, gotcha.
I can recount the story.
Well, John, hold on. Let's wait. Let's go maybe later in the show to get that story going, because I actually kind of want to hear about it too. I must have skipped that part in the article.
Oh, okay. I will sit on it.
I love it.
Long story short, I agree with what Spencer said about this course. Okay. Spencer knows what he's talking about.
Well, look, as the theme is, it seems like all things are better from Mexico, right? Mexican Coke, Mexican raccoons. They just improve when you're in Mexico. Mexican golf courses. Who doesn't want to be in Mexico playing golf? So here we are. We're going to win some money on the Mexican golf course. Let's dive right in, right? I think we got a pretty loaded pool. I think the top range is an interesting one for sure. Sia, you want to kick us off in the top range tonight?
Yeah, I'd love to. Okay, so John, are you a cat person?
I am a cat person. I own a cat, and she has made cameos in these videos before. I think she's locked out today, but I did adopt a cat, so yes.
Okay, so
confirmed.
are you also a dog person? Do you also own a dog? And what's your cat's name?
I'm just a cat person. I'm not anti-dog,
Wow.
but I do live in an apartment, and I think it's not fair to a dog to confine them to the square footage that I'm limited to right now. So down the line, when I have a yard, I will become a dog person. But in my current living situation, I am strictly a cat person. Her name is Molly. I didn't name her. I adopted her as a senior. She was 10, and that was her name. And I tried to give her a bunch of different names, and she would only respond to Molly. So that is what we stuck with.
John, really good save with the whole dog, it being unfair thing, because you could see the disappointment on my face, and then you totally just made up for it. Okay, a few more questions before we get to somebody else to actually evaluate this top range. Okay, if you could be one golfer on the PGA Tour, who would it be?
Ooh, if I could be one golfer on the
Jason
PGA
Day.
Tour.
Who comes to mind first? This is rapid fire.
I mean, well, the first thing that comes to mind is Tiger Woods, but that's not actually an answer. So, let me say answer. I'll say Abraham Answer. That guy
Nice.
lives a very cool life, and every time he posts anything on Instagram, there's like 5 different celebrities that comment on it. So he is well connected, and he has a tequila company. So
I love that.
that's my
Okay,
answer.
12-round cage match. Pat Mayo versus Rick Gehman. Who wins?
I'm gonna give a nod to Rick because I know we're partial to Rick on this show. So
That's correct.
nothing against Pat, but I know we have direct ties to Rick. So go Rick. Also
Candy-
watched Rick's interview with Vic, and it was fantastic. So
100%. At 300 yards to unknown. If you're not already downloading and listening to that, you're missing out. Candy corn, insulting Halloween treat, or not that bad?
very insulting.
Yeah, totally agree.
Just rude.
Yeah, it's rude, right?
Thoughtless.
Favorite cheap beer. We're talking Miller Lite, Bud Light, Coors Light. What's your favorite cheap beer?
Labatt
Busch Light?
Blue. Syracuse guy here, so easily Labatt Blue.
Okay, I'll give you one more before we move on to actual analysis. Favorite comedic movie?
The Other Guys, which I was just thinking about because Mark Wahlberg is in it, and he is the one who comments most frequently on Abraham Answer's posts. I could watch that any day of the year.
Wow, what a tie-in. Nice work. Okay, that's all my time. Who are we going to next?
That is fair. Spence, why don't you go next? Who do you like here in the top range?
Yeah, so we have 7 players this week above $10,000. Justin Thomas leads the way at 11,200. As I mentioned, he was the number 1 golfer in my model from an overall rank sense. He did place behind Answer and Hovland when looking for only GPP playability, but it's hard to find too many negatives for him. I guess the one glaring issue from a statistical perspective is that he ranks 97th in driving accuracy and 99th in fairways gained on this course in my model. But he carries enough firepower off the tee that he should be able to club down just fine and be creative with his 3 woods or irons. We saw him do that exact strategy when he won the Players' Championship this season. So there is potential opening for him to play conservatively off the tee and still be able to use his strength and control his wedges and irons into the greens. Hovland at 10,900 has about as much volatility as you will find when it comes to his course history here. 2 missed cuts in 2018 and 2019. He then won the tournament last year. I think that kind of expresses my point in a nutshell, that rollover predictability is virtually non-existent for most players. I think that's why I'm not including any into it. And I know John said yesterday, and I'll let him get into that of what he's doing with comp courses with it. But I think Hovland's game is trending towards another win if he can figure out how to get his putter going. He ranks third in my upside model and has averaged 3.3 strokes with his irons over his last 10 trackable starts. I notice a positive trend with him that anytime he's gained in a start, he has gained in the next start 4 straight times with the flat stick. So if you give him a lull and he gains, he's going to do it again. So it might be coming together at the right time for him. Answer at 10,700. I wish they would have just made him the highest price player on the board. It probably wouldn't have stopped most of the onslaught, but I'm sure a handful of users would have thought twice about playing a golfer like Answer over Thomas. As everyone knows that listens to me in any capacity, I'm not an Answer guy. I think he's quite often one of the most overpriced options on the board because of his popularity inside of this industry, but I don't necessarily believe that to be the case here at Mayakoba. He's a head-to-head favorite over every golfer in the betting market, including Thomas, and he was a top-ranked golfer in my model when looking for just upside. Tournaments like this one, where the top 3 golfers in price are also the top 3 on my board, make it tough to avoid looking at up top when adding in your first selection, but there are always ways to pivot into a less predictable lineup construction. I'm not opposed to the idea of stacking $10,000 golfers. I think that quickly will help you with some of the ownership issues. I also don't love the $9,000 range as a whole. So if you skip a start of Answer and Wise in particular in GPPs, I think you're already a little bit different. Finau's probably one of the better contrarian pivots at 10,600. I like where his ownership's at. I don't love the price on Hatton at 10,300. I think you could have swapped him for a random $9,000 golfer and gotten a more legitimate price tag. I like Horschel for cash at 10,100. And Koepka continues to be a stay away for me. I'd rather play someone like Scottie Scheffler in the 9,000s if I'm going to drop down into that zone.
I like it. John, who are you looking at up here?
I really like Abe, to be honest. I mean, I got Abe at 27-1, like immediately when odds opened, and I've seen him as low as like 16. So if he opened at 16, I would not share the same sentiment. But I mean, he checks every box. We just watched Hideki win in front of his home crowd. That's fresh in our minds. And that's pretty much the same situation we're going to have here where Abraham Answer is playing in front of his home crowd the only time of year now that the WGC Mexico has kind of relocated. This is their only chance to see their star. And for the first time, he's coming to this event as a PGA Tour winner. So I think when you play in front of your hometown crowd with that kind of monkey off your back, I think there's validity to that. I think if there is a fade narrative that he's going to be too nervous to play in front of his crowd, he's already proven that he plays well at this tournament. Fits him perfectly. As I was saying in the beginning, like if you keep the ball in play, you are going to be in position to go very low. We know he's capable of going low. Looked a little rusty at the Shriners, but for his first event of the new year in Las Vegas, I think we can give him a pass for that. And he bounced right back at the CJ Cup with a good showing. So I like Abe. It's hard to look at Justin Thomas at the top and say, you're confident he's not going to do well. We saw what he did at TPC Sawgrass on a more angular, shorter positional course. So he absolutely can club down and do just fine here. It's past Palm greens. We've talked a bit about how if you're not the best putter, you can still find some success on past Palm. So, and he himself has won on past Palm courses overseas. So definitely in play, definitely a concern when you're playing a bunch of outrights that Justin Thomas could just go beast mode this week and wipe the slate clean. So maybe in DFS, I have a little more exposure to him. Victor Hovland, another guy, he's always played well on past Palm. His first 2 wins came on past Palm here in Puerto Rico Open. And a guy that, again, just keeps the ball in play. So I think those are the top 3 priced players. And, I agree with that evaluation. Those are my 3 favorite players. The rest of the guys in the 10K range, I will probably be staying away from.
I like it. For me, I think the obvious, Answer and Hovland, there's a lot to like. The concern is going to be from a GPP perspective. What's that ownership going to be come Wednesday night? There is a number, I think, anywhere under 25%. I'm happy to eat that chalk. When you start getting closer to 30%, that's when I'm going to start kind of figuring if it's worth kind of going into that. So let's just keep an eye on that going into Thursday. And then the rest of this range, I'm intrigued by Finau and Hatton. Obviously the on paper plays are way better for Answer and Hovland, but these are still 2 guys that are better golfers, better pedigree golfers than the rest of the field. And I think by a good margin. So if you get a week this week where Finau is finding a lot of fairways. Same with Hatton. I think they can really go low. So those would be the two pivots I would look up at here. Other than that, I do think you want to be as balanced as you can, especially if you're going to cram in a lot of Answer and Hovland. So I don't think you can play too much of two of these guys. It's just going to be hard from a roster construction standpoint. So with that being said, let's dive into this 9K range. Sia, you want to kick us off here?
I do. By the way, I agree. I mean, Hovland and Answer, those are the guys I like the best. I also agree with the Finau pivot, especially when you look at his last few tries here. He's been pretty good. He's got a miscut in there, but 8th and 16th. So he's certainly not a disaster on this course. At least history doesn't indicate he is. And to your point, he is one of the class players of this field. I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, to me, the gap between like Finau, and I understand like Billy Ho's experience here is really good. His history here is really good. But I mean, I'm just saying pedigree wise, the gap between Tony Finau and almost everybody below him, I think is pretty steep. If just from a long-term view of it. Okay. So 9K range, John, better holiday, Christmas or Thanksgiving?
Christmas. Thanksgiving is at the bottom of the board for me. It's Christmas.
Gotcha. Okay.
Christmas at the top of the board.
Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune?
That's a good question. I would go Wheel. I feel like I'm more involved in Wheel. Like I don't know the answers to all the Jeopardy questions.
That's fair. That's fair. I thought you were going to like pretend like it was Jeopardy, but it really wasn't. But I appreciate the candor. Your last name, you pronounced it for me, but what kind of name is that? What's the background there?
It's German. It translates to hazelnut farmer.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Look, how much did we just learn about John right there? You're welcome, everybody. Your go-to Starbucks drink, assuming you drink coffee.
I am a black coffee drinker, and I don't go to Starbucks because they naturally put like syrup in it, even if you ask for black. So blacklist for Starbucks for me. I'm a Duncan guy.
Interesting. I'm actually a black coffee drinker too, and I go to Starbucks, so I'm going to have to look into this.
I mean, They don't always, but sometimes they do have had some bad incidents, and now they're on the blacklist.
Interesting. The blacklist indeed. Okay. True or false? Miley Cyrus actually pretty damn talented.
True. Liked the new album.
She's
impressed.
actually a good actress too. She was on Black Mirror. She had a whole episode on Black Mirror. She's really good.
Big
she's
Black
super
Mirror
insightful.
fan here.
Yeah. Super insightful. You got to listen to interviews with her. I'm telling you. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Oh, I love this conversation. Hot dog is emphatically not a sandwich. A sandwich, to be a sandwich, has to be the verb sandwiched between something. There is no between in a hot dog bun.
Okay, so
it's a taco.
Yeah, you could argue that there is an in between there, but I agree with your answer. Real quick, Joel and Spencer, is a hot dog a sandwich? Joel, go first.
Hot dog is a sandwich.
Oh, you're wrong. Spencer?
I agree with John. Not.
There we go. 3-1. Okay, last one. My time's almost done for this segment. Underrated band, John. A band that you follow that just not a lot of people listen to. Or that isn't fully appreciated. Like we can know them, but like maybe you think they're just better than other people do.
Let's see. That's a good question. My answer, I'm like blanking on the name of the band.
They're so underappreciated that you can't even think
yes.
of them.
Yeah, so that's the wrong answer. Okay, so we'll come back to that. Who wants to go next for the 9K range?
And I think that was actually a good use of the 9K range time because I'm not going to have any exposure to the 9K range in my DFS lineups. I will say Aaron Wise is a guy that I love in one and done this week. If you're in a one and done league, because he's never going to be hotter than he is right now, and he's never going to go into a course where he has better history. And I don't think he's going to be mega chalk with so many bigger names ahead of him as favorites this week. So I think he's in a good spot for one and done. But DFS wise, I'm not really going to be playing these guys.
He's my one and done pick for the first cut one and done that I'm doing. So awesome.
I'm embarrassed to ask this. What is one and done?
Ouch.
One and done. One and done is like the survivor of golf.
Okay.
So you pick a golfer every week. Whatever he earns on tour goes to your aggregate earnings.
Got
of course, the year you can't pick him twice.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think on paper he looks good. Like he's a good history here. He's playing well. But at this price tag and ownership that's coming, I'm just like, I can't get around to that. I can't do it. So I hope it doesn't bite me in the butt, but I'm just not going to be able to go there. For me, in the 9K range, listen, Patrick Reed was good last week against nobody that's relevant. I like him this week again. I know it sounds crazy, but I think he might be turning a corner. So Reed, I am going to play. I got some exposure to Reed. Other than that, there's not a ton I like in this 9K range either. I'm probably won't have too much other exposure except for a little bit of Reed. How about you, Spence? Who are you looking at here?
I like Scottie Scheffler at 9,900. I think he could just as easily be in the 10,000s if he didn't provide two questionable showings in Vegas. He lost heavily off the tee in one, pretty badly with his irons in the other. He gained in those two categories during the opposite starts. I'd be more concerned if one factor of his game was trending in the wrong direction, but this feels more like a situation where he just wasn't clicking on all cylinders. I assume we will put the pieces together soon. If looking at just head-to-head matchups, he's a favorite over Koepka, Horschel, and Hatton, while being a slight dog to Finau, and that's probably indicative of where he should have been priced. Aaron Wise, I don't have a problem with the price tag as much as I have a problem with the ownership. Like, I can't justify playing him at 18 to 20%. I think the price tag's actually kind of decent, all things considered. Like, there may be ways to use him, like obviously a one and done. Maybe you could play him for a cash build, although he has been volatile at this course. It hasn't been all sunshine and roses for him. Like, he does have two missed cuts to go along with his two top 10 since 2017. And then the two contrarian pivots that I like are, as you said, Joel, Patrick Reed, and I like Shane Lowry a little bit. Both are negative for me in price versus rank, but I don't mind taking shots on them since it won't take much for me to get overweight at about 5%. But that's probably going to be it for me in this zone. I'll monitor ownership on everybody to make sure it doesn't get into a range I wasn't anticipating, but I'll have the most exposure to Scheffler and then a varying amount of Lowry and Reed beneath that.
I like it. Now, you guys have to excuse me. This hosting with four people is advanced. Is there anyone else, or is there any other plays in the 9K range before we dip down to the 8K range?
Well, let me ask this. Is anybody interested in Will Zalatoris at all? It seems like, just from a price standpoint, like he could probably be higher, maybe in that Patrick Reed range, and he's not. Does anybody see value with Zalatoris?
I don't like the fit for him here. I don't think he has control of the driver, and he's a guy who can really lose one. With that swing speed he has, how far he hits it, like it can really get away from you. And that's really a strength in his arsenal that he's used for his high finishes. But I think this is a really tough fit for him. So I'm going to be fading him.
Yeah, gotcha. Probably the same for me too.
Yeah, my concern is, what John was saying about you got to be really accurate here, right? That's pretty clear, and that's not his forte. He tends to be pretty wild. I think he can, even if he keeps accuracy for a couple of days, he has one wild day that could really blow up his whole round. So for that reason, I'm out. All right, let's push this down to the 8K range. We are moving right along. I actually like this range a good deal, so I'm interested to see, Spencer, who are you looking at here?
Yeah, I like this range too. I think there's a lot of playable options. Cameron Tringale, 8,900. I think he's the natural GPP pivot off of Wise if you're trying to figure out a spot to get contrarian. His form doesn't give you an idea that his upside might be as high as Wise's, but Tringale's a different golfer this season than he's been in his career. He ranks fourth in my overall model and inside the top 40 in all weighted statistics that I used, including grading third at courses under 7,200 yards. Matthew Fitzpatrick, 8,800. Third-ranked golfer in this field in moderate to severe wind, and is just a week removed from being the top-priced player on the board at the Bermuda. Fitzpatrick isn't necessarily a value for me on the surface, but any course that mimics some of these short courses like Harbour Town or anything like that, I'm always going to give him a second look. He's fourth in this field in putting on slow greens and 17th at courses under 7,200 yards. McNeely at 8,500. I think you can always make an argument that McNeely might be better suited for cash than GPPs, but I can make a strong case for him across the board if I use my safety rating when looking at him. He's contributed 2 top 26s at the property in his 2 starts and should like the slower greens. I think Russell Henley at 8,200 is going to be popular, but I understand why with it. He's been surprisingly bad at the course with 2 missed cuts in a 20-night, but as I've said numerous times, I'm not overly concerned with course history at this particular stop. Despite the popularity, I would probably rather use him in GPPs only because of the negative past trends. But he's top 10 in this field when it comes to weighted proximity, ball striking, bogey avoidance, and par 4 scoring. And I'm ready to finally back Mito Pereira to some extent on DraftKings at 8,100. It's a really good price for a golfer that has demonstrated a high floor early in his career. And I think the fact that we get him at a price tag outside of the top 20 golfers only enhances his ceiling because we don't need as much upside from him to zoom past his salary. So, as you can tell, John is very happy by that decision there with it. But that's what I'm going to be doing this week.
I like it. John, tell us, who you liking here in this range?
Yeah, hashtag Mito. I'm with you on Mito. Mito he's showing me what unconditional love is, because every time Mito disappoints, I'm like, yeah, but, and I see the good in it. And I'm always optimistic, and I look past his flaws and I see his potential. And the Mito bandwagon coming out of the Olympics, coming off of the 3 Korn Ferry Tour wins last year, it was a party. Everybody was on board. Everybody was playing Mito. And he's had a couple weeks in a row where it's sort of like longer hitter, like off the tee favored ball striking courses where he really should have done better, and he's not hitting putts. And slowly the bandwagon is sort of slowing down. I have bet Mito in every tournament he's played in since the Olympics, I think. We're going on like 6 in a row. I bet him this week at 60-1. I'm going to play him in DFS at 8,100. I think Mito Pereira is exactly the same player that Victor Hovland is right now. If you look at their distance stats, their accuracy stats, their approach stats off the tee, all of it, it's almost identical. They're like 1-2 in every stat, or top 10 in all of them. Their shortcomings are their short game. Mito's a little bit better around the green. The entire tour is a little better than Victor right now, but overall, Mito has been a better profile of an around the green player than Hovland, and Hovland's been a slightly better putter. Something that I know you guys talked about at the Zozo that I think is still applicable here is when you play on very smooth, grainless, well-manicured greens, it levels the playing field for the poor putters. And something that Spencer and I were talking about yesterday is, I think where that manifests itself is the bad putters lose their strokes inside 7 feet or 5 feet. You lose a lot of strokes that way. Just the way that the strokes gain works, you're supposed to hit a 5 for more than 50% of the time, and if you miss it, then you've lost nearly a full stroke. On a smooth green that doesn't have a ton of slope, it's hard to miss those putts. So I think when you miss less of those, the weaker putters tend to just not lose those strokes that they normally would on like a Poa green or something. To the same extent, we've seen a lot of success on these greens from great putters. And I think where that manifests itself is if you're sending over a 20, 25 footer and you're a Denny McCarthy or a Patton Kizzire, you're very confident that you can hit that putt because there's not a lot of complication in it. So I think that's what, when we see in the reports that a lot of bad putters do well here and a lot of great putters do well here, I think that's why we sort of see that disparity. But it's a week that I do want to load up on a couple really good tee to green players. I think we're buying low on Mito. I don't think he was horrible last week. We don't have strokes gained at Bermuda, but he had a top 30. He was just fine. We don't know how many putts he missed. I'm assuming he just continued to miss more putts. But the last thing I'll say in defense of Mito, if you look at strokes gained percent by round instead of just strokes gained total, he is gaining in more rounds than he is losing. So over the last 24 rounds, he's gained 14 times and lost 10. So that's something that I like to look into a little bit deeper. Sometimes if you just purely look at strokes gained putting, a guy can lose 5 strokes in a round and it takes him months to be a positive putter again. So every now and then I'll go into Fantasy National and go by the individual rounds and just take a little peek behind the curtain and see what's actually happening here. Mito's had a lot of horrible rounds, but he's also had plenty of plus rounds. So if he's capable of putting a couple plus rounds together, I'm going to be there. So yeah, and I'm biased because I'm always going to bet Mito, but that's my case for him. And yeah, and as you guys said, a lot of good options in the AK range. I don't think there's a single guy in this AK range that I could talk anybody out of, but Mito's my favorite.
I have a question, Joel, because I'm pretty big on Sergio this week, and it's partly because of the theory that, or I guess we actually have some data behind this, that Team No Putt can at least has the potential to succeed here. Sergio's putter, I believe, has kind of improved over the last 4 or 5 tournaments for whatever that's worth. But Sergio's a guy, speaking of tee to green, he seems like the perfect fit at a course like this. Any thoughts? And Isaiah shares that view. He's in our chat. Obviously, he's on Team Sergio, maybe on Team No Putt this week. John, what are your thoughts on Sergio and Joel or Spencer? Any of you guys playing him this week?
Yeah, I think actually I was watching Sergio's feature group in at the RBC Heritage at Harbortown, and he had a rough go there. And what happened was the round kind of got away from him, and then he took some like really aggressive lines, and it got worse. So in my head, I'm like, don't play Sergio on a tight course because I saw that one thing happen, but that's usually not a good way to handicap it. I haven't given a ton of thought to Sergio this week, to be honest. I kind of like Fitzpatrick better, right above him. With Sergio, I'm concerned that and you mentioned that the putting's kind of getting better. I haven't really looked too much into that, but I'm just watching Sergio putt. It doesn't look like he's capable of finding the hole sometimes. He doesn't look like he's due for regression when he's out there. I was sweating him at the 3M Open, and I was like, there's no way he's going to hit this 5-footer that he has. He's standing over it, and in his body language is like, get me off this course. I'm tired of trying to hit these 5-footers. So I have a lot of scar tissue, I guess, is the problem with me and Sergio.
It's hard for positive regression when you're putting with your eyes closed, as Sergio is. So that's not helping the situation. But the one thing I will say about Sergio, and I like him less than everybody that I named. So take that whole group. I have him beneath all those guys. But if you look at the $8,000 golfers and above, Sergio is the biggest model difference I have when it comes to my rank versus ownership percentage. I'm looking at about 5% on him right now. I have a very big edge in GPPs if you do want to take a shot. So I don't have a problem with anybody who wants to play him, but I do think there's a lot of volatility that's going to go into that play. And that's fine. I mean, if you're trying to separate a lineup with a guy like Answer or anything like that, I mean, you throw in Sergio and you're all of a sudden very different to begin with that.
And Joel, before you give us your opinion on Sergio, I do want to point out his putting over the last, let's say, 6 tournaments, minus 0.37, not bad. Minus 1.32, not bad for Sergio. Minus 0.12, plus 5.23, plus 0.84, and then it was pretty bad before that. So it's clearly hasn't been awful. The one thing I will qualify that with is his approach game hasn't been classic Sergio lately. But again, it looks like the putter might be doing okay. Joel, anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, I think, listen, I'm a Sergio guy. I'd normally like to go to Sergio. My concern for this week is it's the price tag, really. It's, Sergio is a guy that's a 7K golfer that gets overlooked that I want to put in and be like, no one's playing Sergio. I'm getting a discount. Right now at 8.7, he's got to be, your 1B, your second tier guy, which is not how I want to use him. So I'm not saying I won't play any shares of him. I'll probably sprinkle him in, but I won't be overweight on Sergio just because I just think, Sergio's a guy I look for his value, and at this price, he's not value.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair description of that. Like when I look at what's value, it's closer than you would think when it comes to, like, if he was in the low thousands, I think I'd be a little intrigued. But my upside, my potential of why I like him comes from that contrarian nature with him. But I think that makes sense. I mean, you don't have to go to him. It's not something that's a requirement.
I mean, you could also play Tyler Duncan and Kyle Stanley and be good to go and just stack up top. Just throw it out there.
The number of putts you missed if you play Kyle Stanley and Sergio Garcia is honestly, if you're going to watch the tournament, don't do it. I'm concerned for your health. You're going to have a heart attack.
You'll never play again.
Yeah, it'll be so frustrating. So just for your sheer entertainment, don't play both Stanley and Sergio because that's going to cause you to have some heart issues.
So I should take him off my first round leader card, which is coming at the end of this show.
First round leader is okay because he only has to choke one of the days, right? It's fine. You can make a few putts one day, so not all. Awesome, guys. I love it. Let's go. Let's head down. Let's keep this trucking along. Is there anything before we move on? Are we missing anything from the 8K range?
Not on my end. I mean, I'm not going to play any Ricky. I'll tell you that right now.
We didn't address Russell Henley. His history here is quite bad, considering he seems to be a great course fit. I don't really know how to explain that. I know we're not necessarily super focused on course history, but with that said, I still kind of like him. I mean, I certainly don't hate Russell Henley.
Yeah, I like Henley a lot. I mean, he might be a better outright bet than anything, but I think he's playable across the board.
Yeah, my take on Henley, and it's kind of, I know it's like the opposite of my take on Sergio. It's kind of like there aren't all that many value plays, right? So once you get below 8.5, in the low 8Ks, 7Ks, there's probably 15 to 20 guys I'm considering there. So he's one of them, right? This is a guy who does have that top 15 upside, who you can get into your roster for, 8,200. And he fits the mold, and then he should be accurate. The history is a little concerning, but Russell Henley's the type of guy that will go 3 months where he misses every cut, and then he'll go 3 months where he's playing like a top 20 player in the world. So right now we're getting the better version of Henley, so it's a time to go after him. I wouldn't be over concerned with the history portion of him.
Hey, so Joel, before we get to what are we going to, the 7K range now?
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
So I have plenty more questions for John, but I want to, instead of doing questions, I want to do the looks like game just real quick. I want to do 3 looks like. Do you guys know what the looks like game is from the Le Batard show? I feel like they invented it. Do you know what that is?
No.
They pick like a random celebrity, could be anybody, and they basically say, like, they take a picture of them and they're like, this guy looks like such and such, and it's something completely ridiculous. It's not like looks like this other person. It's just like it's very descriptive. And anyway, I came up with a few things. I literally did it right before the show, so they're not very good. And honestly, Joel and Spencer and John, I think you're familiar with that bit at the Le Batard show, but you guys probably won't laugh, and maybe nobody will laugh, but I'm gonna do it anyway. So I have 3 looks like. 3 looks likes, yeah, for John for PGA Tout. So let's start. Are you ready, John?
Hit me.
I hope you're not insulted. Okay, I'm not going to call you John. I'm going to call you PGA Tout because it's better for the bit. PGA Tout looks like the guy at the driving range who hits a perfect drive and then looks over at a random person next to him and says, "Yeah, that just happened."
I've absolutely done that. Like, usually I do that.
Okay, so next one. PGA Tout looks like the guy who speeds up to make sure someone doesn't merge into his lane and then says, "Maybe next time, brah," knowing no one can hear him.
No,
So nothing.
It's a funny story with that. I drive my girlfriend's Volkswagen Beetle, and it's like a tiny little red bug. And I'm usually driving my own SUV, but we moved to this apartment, so I got her car. And I get cut off all the time now. I have no respect on the road anymore. So I am constantly moving up because people are itching to cut me off.
Nice. All right. I'm glad these are
Nailed that.
relevant.
You're 2 for 2 right now.
Okay, last one. PGA Tout looks like the guy who walks an old lady across the street and then gives her his phone number and says, "You call me if you need anything."
That's just a nice compliment.
It is. I couldn't go with 2
Nice
like
thing to say.
douchey things. So I figured I'd round it out with something good. Okay, so carry on, guys. That's my time.
I love it. All right, Spence, why don't you kick us off here in the 7K range?
Yeah, I'll keep the answer really short and to the point here. So of players I'm considering, and there's going to be a couple more. I mean, obviously you can use the model that I released. You can get a better idea of some of them. But Justin Rose, 7,900. I think that's GPP only, but I always like him on short courses with slow greens. Seamus Power, that's my boy, 7,700. I know I keep stressing this point on all the shows I do, but Seamus is an elite statistical golfer and he has been for the past year. I think Emiliano Grillo, there's a lot of ownership there at 7,500. I'm not in love with that, but it's hard to say too much bad about him on this track. 4 top 15s in his last 5 tries. Ian Poulter, 7,500, looks to be one of the better contrarian pivots. He's currently a small favorite over Seamus in the head-to-head market at 4 times less ownership. That's a great way to find leverage. And then Brian Harmon, 7,300, is in the same boat I just mentioned with Grillo there. And, they're both minus 110 in a battle against each other. And that's 2% versus 14%. So I think that Vegas and the sports books are kind of giving you an indication that Harmon and Grillo are on the same playing field to an extent there. And you have one guy that's 2% and one that's 14%. I think Domin and Norlander makes sense as popular price tags with what you're going to get there. Still might be able to be used for his driving prowess at 7,000. But my favorite play is Kevin Streelman at 7,200. I have a proper price of him being in the mid 8,000s. He's a positive value for me across the board in all game types, although the real value is coming from his upside in GPPs. He ranks 10th overall from a statistical perspective, is 14th in the weighted proximity range I ran that somewhat mimics this event.
I love it. Sia, who about you? Who are you looking at here in the 7K range?
I actually have to say a few players that I actually like. Just real quick, I'm just going to run through them, and then I have like 4 or 5 more questions. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, I love Seamus Power. So I'm all in there. Emiliano Grillo I really like, especially if you're going with the sort of the team no putt narrative. Streelman I think I like Russell Knox better, but I like both of those guys. As I go down the list, I think Brendan Todd is interesting, even though if memory serves, last week he wasn't so hot. And then I agree, Joel Damon I think is a solid. I thought he'd be a contrarian play. I'm seeing some ownership on him, and then maybe Henrik Norlander. That's pretty much rounds out my 7K. A few questions for you, John.
I've never heard you mention Norlander before.
Yeah, I know. It's so weird. Wait till we get to the 6K range. I'll stay Kyle Stanley like 5 more times. Favorite actor, John?
Favorite actor. Who's the guy? Oscar Isaac is actually popping out to me because I just watched Dune and I was like, I'm feeling it.
Awesome. Okay. What's 7 times 8 plus 5?
61?
61. There you go. Nice save. Do you hate people that spell John without an H?
I do. And I hate people who spell my name without an H even more.
Right. What follows the line, just throw your hands in the air?
Wave it like you just don't care.
Yeah. Do you play fantasy football?
Yes.
Red grapes or green grapes?
I always consider them purple.
Okay. Purple grapes or green grapes?
I'm a purple grape guy. Fair
enough. Last one for this round, Brooks or Bryson?
I have reversed back to Bryson. I was OG Brooks, and now I'm back on Bryson's team.
Wow.
He's won me over.
Wow. Joel, real quick. Spencer, real quick. Brooks or Bryson?
Bryson.
I'm sticking with Brooks.
There we go. All right. Somebody talking some sense.
Young the Giant is my answer to underrated band.
All right.
Just came back to me.
All right. That's my time.
I will add, though, even though I said Brooks, I'm taking Dave Portnoy when they play golf against each other.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Got to see that line.
It's got to be minus 35 strokes. I'd probably still think Brooks. All right. We're on the 7K range. I'll go ahead. I'm going to start. I'm going to go through here. And, I'm with you. I really love Seamus Power. I think, he's a guy that I just think, people still look at him as kind of like a JV Corn Ferry guy. And he's not. He's really come into his own this year, especially. And I think he's just underpriced here at 7,700. I think he's a good value. He's someone that definitely has top 10 upside. I think in the same vein, Neiman is not necessarily a great course fit for me, but he's one of those guys that, is just a higher class or caliber golfer than most of what you get in the 7K range. So if he has a week where, he's hitting it accurately off the tee, I think he can really do well here. Ian Poulter looks really good. I think Poulter's having like a breakthrough season. Like, he's not obviously winning a ton of tournaments, but he's been placing really well. He can get really hot with the putter, and he does find fairways. So I think a lot of things point in the right direction for Poulter at pretty low ownership and a reasonable price tag. I will look for him. You guys know how I am. I don't like to go back to a guy who just won a tournament. So for Herbert, I'll probably be out, especially he doesn't seem like to be a great course fit here anyway. But we can stick to this range. Some the last couple guys that I might consider down at the bottom here are Brian Harmon, who has really came into one of his better seasons in a long time. The course history, or at least the course fit rather, should be pretty good. At 7,300, I think he makes a lot of sense. And then down here at the bottom of this range, someone to keep an eye on or think about. I'm aligned with Streelman, but the guy I want to mention is Taylor Pendrith. We saw him last week really compete. He I don't know if it was pressure or just like the weird conditions that kind of threw him off where he fell apart at the end, but he was looking really good. I think he can put together another good week here. I think he's playing some good golf, and you're certainly getting a good price tag on him. So that's it for me in the 7K range. Are we missing anyone?
I have a trivia question for you guys.
Oh, I like
can you name the only Shotlink strokes gained event that was played on Paspalum greens?
Well, a Puerto Rico Open?
Nope. Although technically on a technicality, they should have it, but
right.
It's not in the, I guess it's not in the continental U.S.
Right.
I don't know if I know the answer.
I have no idea.
It's actually not correctly listed in Fantasy National, but the answer is Kiowa Island, ocean course. And my follow-up question is, can you guess who is averaging 11.7 strokes gained on past Palom rounds in the history of the Shotlink era?
Wow. I'm assuming it's somebody in this
7K
range.
range.
I'm having memories of my school days where it's like I feel unprepared for the test. I didn't study enough.
Well, how do you think I feel?
I'll say I'll give you a guess. I'll say Brendan Steele.
I've got a guess too. Carlos Ortiz.
Joel?
I got nothing. I don't know.
We've got a guess from the chat here.
No, not JT, not Pat Perez. The answer,
Pat Perez is a pretty good guess.
Justin Rose. Justin Rose gained over 11 strokes, the only event that we've ever seen data putting on past Palom. So you can only assume he'll gain another 11 at Mayakoba. And if he does that, he's going to win by about 15 strokes. So I like Justin Rose, not really for that reason. That's just a fun fact. But he seems to play these shorter courses well. It putts well on the slower greens. And has been putting together a good little stretch on the European Tour, which is something I ignored week over week until Lucas Herbert won. And now I have to overreact to that and look deep into Euro Tour stats from here going out.
And Jesse, we already, sorry, I have the wrong one. We already answered the question of, is a hot dog a sandwich? You must have come into the show late. That's really funny though, that you wanted to ask him that. I don't know if he's just playing with us, but do you play video games, John? If so, greatest golf video game of all time?
I mean, those OG Tiger Woods games, I can't really differentiate year over year, but I spent a lot of time playing the Tiger Woods games.
Are you currently a PlayStation or Xbox guy, or neither?
I'm an Xbox guy. I don't play as often as I used to. I actually, ironically, put the time that I used to spend playing Xbox into the website. So all my free time went into that.
Real quick though, what is the website exactly, so people know to go to it?
The website is thepgatout.com.
See, it's not the John Halsbauer. It's the PGA Tout. See, that's what we should call you.
Correct.
Branding, man. Branding 101. All right, sorry. Carry on.
I love it. I love it. Good stuff, guys. All right, we're going to round out this pool here with the 6K range. For me, in the 6K range this week, I don't want to dip down here too much, right? If I sprinkle one guy into some of my labs, I'll do that. But I'm going back to the more and more we realize, guys, the more we play, you realize if you don't get 6 of 6 through, your weekend's over. And so I know, like, when you're building your lineup, it's like, well, maybe this guy will make the cut. And then, you pray for it, and then it doesn't happen. And then you look back and like, I don't have any 6 of 6 because I kept taking too many chances. So I'm not going to make that mistake. Maybe a couple sprinkles, but for the most part, I don't think we have to dip down here too much. John, do you want to kick us off? Who do you like down here in the 6K range?
Yeah, sure. I think if I want to go dig down deep here for salary relief in a 6 of 6 lineup, my favorite cheap guy is Tyler Duncan. Tyler Duncan has played this event 4 times and made the cut every time. He's gained strokes off the tee in 10 consecutive events, which is a wild run for a guy like Tyler Duncan to be on. He had a T14 in his last start at Sanderson Farms. And the first 2 events of this new season, he's looked good. He's averaging gaining strokes in all 4 categories over those first 2 events. He doesn't have a super high ceiling with the irons. I think at best he really just stays within plus or minus 1 stroke gain on approach. I don't think this is a must approach week. I mean, every approach is important every single week, but you can hit some long putts here. So I think if you're just hitting greens, and it's so much easier to do that if you're playing from out of the fairway, which he does well. Tyler Duncan is the guy that I like a lot. I also like Guido at the top of the 6K range. I don't know a ton about him, to be honest, but he caught my attention with the run that he was on at the US Open, and then followed it up at the Travelers with the T14. I live bet him last week at the Bermuda. And the reason he tailspinned is directly correlated with that. So I'm not going to hold that against him. I have a terrible live betting track record. So That was inevitable. I should have known better, and I apologize to Guido for putting that on him. But yeah, he was T15 going into the final round. He finished like T50 because he played in torrential downpour, which, that's my fault. So I think he can bounce back here. He's just a good player, good off the tee player. Again, everything that I'm looking at this week is your first shot. Can you keep it in play, and can you get yourself in position to score it? And then, all bets are off. But those are my two favorite guys in the 6K range.
Just curious, before we make our lineups of the week, do you have any ideas of who you might be live betting this week to make sure we face?
I always hope to not have to live bet. A live bet is like a desperation reload where I am going, like this week I had nobody inside the top 40 at Bermuda, which has never happened to me on my betting card. So it's always a desperation play to live bet. I really try not to do it unless I absolutely have to.
Fair. Well, if you do this week, let me know who, so that we know to be prepared for that.
Yeah, everyone will know. It's made me.
See ya. Who are you looking at down here in the 6K range?
All right, so I'll give you some guys here. I really like Chris Kirk. And by the way, and for the reasons that he's a really good course fit, but also if you look at his odds, I mean, they're right up there with the guys in like the 73, 74, 7,500 range. So that kind of tells you where the sports books perceive him. And I'm honestly surprised he's at 6,700. Even if I didn't see the odds, I'd be surprised by that. A couple other kind of random flyers. Doug Gim is interesting. He was brought up in the chat by Isaiah. I don't know what happened to him. His ball striking just kind of went away. If you guys have an opinion on him, I'd love to hear it. JJ Spawn, I think, is interesting. He's not playing poorly. I think he's a good course fit. I agree with Tyler Duncan. And I'm going to take a shot at Kyle Stanley. So I think those are the only guys I'm really interested in. I think Jimmy Walker is interesting because he's starting to play well again. And I think he's a very good course fit. So that's where I'm going. But honestly, Chris Kirk is the one I'm actually super confident in. And I'll co-sign with Guido Migliozzi. That seems like a little bit of a misprice there. I've got like 4 more questions for John. John, you ready?
Always.
All right. You do some work with the Showtime people, correct?
False. HBO.
False. HBO. Okay. My bad. What's your favorite show on HBO? Historically, too. It doesn't have to be current.
Game of Thrones is like my tiger answer. Like, it doesn't really count. I would say, well, I guess Hard Knocks is something I really like. I've worked on that every year for the last like 6 years. And that's something that I do actually clear my plans every Tuesday to be there watching it. So I think they do a great job with that. They win a lot of awards for it. And I would say a sneaky show that maybe not everybody has seen from a few years ago. One of the first shows I worked on at HBO is The Night Of.
Oh my God. That's one of my favorite series of all time. It was just one season, right?
Yeah. It was just a one-time limited series, but one of my favorites.
Oh, by far one of my favorites. Did you all hear the name dropping there that John was just super showing off? What do you mean when you say I worked on Hard Knocks and The Night Of?
So I work in advertising. So if you've ever seen an ad for an HBO show, I'm the one planning and placing the ads. So for Hard Knocks, we have some good stories with Hard Knocks. For the Cleveland, the year it was with the Browns, was the year that LeBron left, and the LeBron mural was vacant for a couple of weeks, and we pushed for months to try to get a Hard Knocks banner to replace the LeBron mural, and they were asking for $100 million for 2 weeks. So we ended up buying the second largest wall in Cleveland, which is the size of a garage, and the way that it was shot in the title sequence of Hard Knocks that season makes it look like we actually bought the real wall, but it was actually all superimposed. So never a dull moment with Hard Knocks.
Wow. Are you on set ever?
No, especially now. This is my office in my
gotcha,
and that's my bed. So everything I do is over email and stuff. But yeah, every now and then maybe a premiere event or something. But I'm not actually shooting stuff. No, I'm just advertising.
Still, though, what a show off. Do you like the cuisine at Boston Market? Yes or no?
Nah, it's not really for me. I like the mashed potatoes and gravy. That's decent, but the quality of the chicken and the turkey there, I could live without it.
That's the wrong answer. You guys like Boston Market, right? Spencer, Joel?
I don't think I've ever had it before.
I'm gonna be honest with you. See, I actually think he gave the exact right answer. I think
Oh
they
my
do good
gosh.
sides. I don't love the actual chicken. I think
You
it's
get
all
the
sides.
mashed potato. Listen, you get the mashed potatoes with the stuffing, and you get a half dark chicken or a quarter dark, whatever, however hungry you are, and you kind of like mix them together. It's one of the best things that's ever happened to me.
I
Truly.
think this coincides with the Christmas Thanksgiving take, where it's Thanksgiving cuisine, and I don't need it.
Okay, fair enough. Speaking of food, McDonald's fries and Wendy's fries, which one for cash and which one for GPP? There's a right answer here.
Oh, that's a great question. Wendy's cash. Wendy's gives you a very consistent crisp. You very rarely get a soggy Wendy's fry. McDonald's, if you get the golden crisp, you get a nice crunch, but there's always a handful of soggy ones at the bottom. Very anti-soggy guy, but I'm also very anti like way too crispy where you're not really getting anything out of it. McDonald's will sometimes do that. Burger King is really the worst with that. They have a lot of just pure crisp fries, but a great McDonald's fry rules them all.
So, Joel, that's interesting because I thought he was going to say McDonald's for cash and Wendy's for GPP. What's your answer there?
So there's two different ways, right? This is an interesting question, right? If you're asking for French fries alone, I think he is correct. I think it's McDonald's for the GPP, Wendy's are the safer cash play. If it's the restaurant as a whole, I flip the answer. McDonald's is my cash fast food restaurant. Wendy's is my GPP fast food restaurant.
Interesting. Spencer,
In
you have a
terms
take
of
here.
the atmosphere,
I
or
think
the
it's the
clientele?
overall menu, right? Where you can hit a home run on the spicy chicken. You can go with a
Guys,
burger. You can go.
I'm not trying to incorporate more metrics into the model. I'm literally just asking for this basic stat, like Wendy's fries, isolated.
See it.
We're
Do you
listening-
watch
we're
our
talking about
show?
approach.
Do you not hear Spencer? It takes all the metrics to win the tournament. You can't just isolate one metric. You won't win the tournament.
Spencer, what's your answer? Wendy's fries, McDonald's fries, GPP cash.
I'm going to take a different route with it. I'm going to buck the trend of what we're doing here or what the game is. It's McDonald's for both. But I mean, if you make me separate the two, McDonald's cash, Wendy's GPP, but it's McDonald's for both. I would rather just light them across the board.
I'm shocked because to me, it's McDonald's for cash all day. It's just kind of like the go-to. It's simple. You kind of know what you're getting. With Wendy's fries, you don't really know what you're getting. You don't know if the cut is going to be super thick or super thin. And it's one of those things where it has a ton of upside because if it's the perfect cut and the perfect crisp, it dwarfs McDonald's fries. To me, it's a no-brainer. GPP for Wendy's. I'm shocked.
The trick behind it is just order the fries without salt at McDonald's, and then you get them cooked fresh, and then you can put them on yourself.
How dare you?
Very rarely get a good 6 of 6 handful at McDonald's.
Yeah.
I'll say that. It's not safe. You're
Well,
getting dog in there. The odds are not in your favor.
See,
there's going to be volatility, obviously.
The HBO advertise guy literally gave McDonald's advertisement on Spencer to push them right here on the show, and you missed that whole thing. You didn't even see it. Spencer was paid by John to say that. That was easy. Come on.
Oh, by the way, McMillions is another good HBO documentary that I would highly recommend.
Which one? What's it called?
It's called McMillions. It's about these group of guys who they beat the system of the McDonald's Monopoly game.
Oh, I saw that.
And they won like millions off of it. They're affiliated with the mob. It's a crazy story.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I would recommend watching it.
That's my time. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's it. I'll go ahead. The 6K range. Someone we didn't mention that I like a lot, Steven Yeager. He is, pretty affordable. Not a lot of ownership. He hits fairways. Tied for 20s at Bermuda. He has the tied for 16th here last year. This was a guy we were talking about last week. I mean, it was a much more JV pool, but this is a guy we were talking about last week as one of the better options. He's now way priced down. I think he's getting overlooked. I actually like him a good deal. After him, I like Spencer's boy. Sorry to steal your thunder, Ryan Moore from Vegas. He's another guy who's very accurate off the tee. He shouldn't get himself in too much trouble. At 6,700, I don't think he'll find a lot of danger. He also does have a decent course history, but we're talking kind of a long time ago, so I don't want to put too much weight on that. Other than that, maybe the last couple guys that I'll mention are Ches Reavie, who is another guy who's known to be pretty accurate off the tee. At 600, it's hard to find a better price than that. And the last guy I'll mention, who I don't love, but at 6,500, Martin Laird, who we've seen pop from time to time. He got 11th at the Shriners. He should be a good course fit here. So a handful of guys down here that we can sprinkle in, but none of these guys I would be overly confident. Anyone else in the 6K range that we may have missed?
I'll run through a couple people. I have a little bit of a different opinion than you do, Joel, this week. I really like this $6,000 range. I think that you could go across the board and there's playable options. And I don't want to name all the guys that were just mentioned. I think Moore, Jaeger, Guido, I think all those guys make sense. I think you can fit them in the lineups. I like Tom Hoge at 6,900, third place here last season, 4 top 36 finishes over his past 5 starts on the PGA Tour. I think Ryan Palmer makes some sense as a contrarian dart throw at 6,900, especially if he continues down this track of being 1% owned. The current form is questionable, having failed to post a top 40 over his past 4 starts, but I think he's too good of a golfer to be in this range. There's a ton of missed cut potential, which this is where you're going with it, Joel. Like, this could be the one that burns you with it. But I think if you're playing one of these really large field GPPs, I mean, my model has him at 0.8% owned right now. Like, if you play a couple, lineups with him in it, it's not going to take much to get overweight. I think Charles Howell and Scott Piercy are tough to ignore at that same price of 6,900. They've combined for 7 top 26s at the property over their past 9 starts. I love Sia's call of Chris Kirk. I think he is probably the best play in this section. Ches Reavie, 6,600, falls into that same category of Howell and Piercy. And I like Graham McDowell at 6,600. I have him as my biggest advantage in ownership versus rank. The data is extremely hit and miss for him on my spreadsheet, but he ranks inside the top 30 as a golfer that is less than 1% owned. I guess the other name I will throw out there is just your random throw a dart, hope for the best with it in something. Eugenio Lopez Chikara, $6,000. I don't know what my spreadsheet is seeing in him to make him inside the top 50 in GPP volatility. He does rank 110th for safety, but he is currently projected to be virtually 0% owned. So if you're playing 150 lineups, you could throw him into a couple there. And, if you get a top 20 out of him, all of a sudden you're going to be the only person in the world with them.
I'm pretty sure, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that name because I don't have it in front of me. Isaiah wrote the first look article this week for WinDailySports.com. I'm pretty sure at the bottom of it, he actually had him as a dart throw.
I love it. I think it's a really interesting, out there play.
Yeah, that's amazing that you guys both brought him up. So anyway, amazing.
Who is this person?
I think he's currently, I could be wrong. I think he's currently at, I think he's in college.
Okay.
Or at least he was last season.
He's an amateur.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so.
All right. Well, good for him. At least, at the very least, if he doesn't win the tournament, he gets a trip to Mexico. So, listen, I didn't get a lot of trips to Mexico when I was in college, so I'm happy for him. All right. Well, before we wrap this up, let's take a look at the outright market. To kick us off, Spence, who are you looking at for outrights?
Yeah, so, this is a week where a lot of these prices have shifted. So I say some of these with the understanding that the prices aren't exactly what they were. Very first bet I made was Abraham Answer at 27-1. That's down to about 15-1 at some books. And I know that's going to be tough to condone that price, but for whatever it's worth, my model believes 16, 17-1, that 16.5-1 range is the correct price on him. I'm not an Answer guy, as I've noted numerous times on that. So if I'm on Answer and my model likes Answer, I think that says something. Matt Fitzpatrick, 40-1. Russell Henley, 60-1. Kevin Streelman, 80-1. Brian Harmon, 90-1. Chris Kirk, 100-1. And my dark horse is Graham McDowell at 200-1.
I like it. John, who you got for outrights this week?
I left a little space on my card to just get one last, maybe you guys could persuade me. So right now the card is starts same as Spencer with Answer at 27. I have Mito, of course, at 60-1. Russell Henley at 66-1, and Kevin Streelman at 100-1. I will be adding 2 of these 3 guys, so maybe you guys give me a little advice here. I have it narrowed down between Matt Fitzpatrick at 40-1, Joaquin Neiman at 50-1, and Justin Rose at 60-1. You guys have any leans there?
I had I had to narrow down my outright card I just wanted to narrow it down to like 4 people for some reason, and Fitzpatrick was the last man out So, I mean, I obviously like that play to a degree.
That's sort of where I'm leaning right now, because it's really just a pure value for the guy who was the odds-on favorite last week. Pretty good comp course, and we've seen Brendan Todd come win back-to-back. So if you were expected to do well the week before, he looked very good, I thought, last week, and the weather's random. So I don't think he did anything to make me feel like he's any worse this week than we should have thought about him last week. I think 40 to 1's a good number, and he's a guy that can hit a lot of putts and pretty good off the tee. So just a value number I was thinking about. A couple other guys that I just like that I may not bet, but maybe I'll like top 10. But I think Russell Knox 100 to 1 makes a lot of sense. Really good, maybe the best course history. Few guys are more reliable to hit fairways than Russell Knox. And Henrik Stenson. Sia, if you want to do a Henrik cage match and you want to put a little friendly wager down, your Henrik versus my Henrik.
Oh, nice.
I'm pretty confident in Stenson. He cannot compete on long courses. I don't think he plays with a driver. I'm pretty sure he only goes as far as a 3-wood, which after I played this course, I was like, I shouldn't even brought the driver. So that had me thinking about Stenson again. Like Lucas Herbert was good on the Euro Tour, so I looked at Euro Tour history. Stenson has 2 top 5s in his last 4 starts at the Euro Tour, which I thought was crazy because you look on Fantasy National, and it's all red. But he seems to have figured something out at the end of last year. This will be his first start. He won at the Hero Challenge, was his last win in the Bahamas, similar conditions. So I think he knows how to figure out the island resort situation. Is here with his buddy Justin Rose, having a good time. I probably won't bet him either, but a guy that I like him will probably be in a few DFS lineups.
I like it. Sia, who are you looking at here in the outright market?
So just real quick, I know we're going long, but this is interesting. Bobby wanted to get into the video game conversation, even though we were talking about golf. But that cheat code, actually, which people my age and Bobby's age are familiar with, you left out 2 steps. Select start is how you finish that cheat code, and this is amazing. Isaiah, he typed this before Spencer gave his answer on the fries. And by the way, he's the same guy who had the guy written up that none of us had ever heard of that Spencer just talked about. So, by the way, you guys are like best friends now. And there was one other comment, Ivan, thanks for appreciating, and then Isaiah, thanks for appreciating the fast food analysis. Okay, real quick, I'll just be super quick. My outrights are, I just left Fitz off at 40 to 1, Sergio Garcia at 50 to 1, Mito 60 to 1, Seamus 60, and Chris Kirk at 90. Those are my 4 outrights.
I like that card too.
I'm going to be quick as well. One of my favorite plays is actually Fitzpatrick. I like him this week. I think that number just seems too good for him. Someone who was the favorite last week, I think he should be close to the top 5 or 10. And then I'm doing one of those weeks where instead of putting out 5 guys, I'm going to try and consolidate, take a swing at the fences. I'm going to have one long shot that I'm going to really go for, and it's going to be Steven Yeager at 130 to 1. That's it for the outright market. And now this is where we make our real money. We're going to take all the money we have. I don't know, John, if you've seen or you know what we do here, but basically we are pretty much perfect with first round leaders. I think our record is either it's like 100% or like 30%, something like that.
It's 1,000%. Yeah, because after you hit 100% a certain number of times, it becomes 1,000%.
So there's no risk. So basically whatever we say, you just put all your money on. It's a lock, right? Mortgage your home, because why would you have that money sitting in your home when you could put it on the bet that's going to hit in a couple days?
Investing.
So we're giving you guys locks. You're welcome. We do this for free. So, I think you would be nice, but whatever. And we'll start with Spencer. Who you got in the first round leader market?
So I have 6 plays this week. Ryan Moore, 130 to 1. That's on DraftKings. Ryan Palmer, 100 to 1. That is also on DraftKings. Emiliano Grillo, 80 to 1 on FanDuel. Carlos Ortiz, 75 to 1 on FanDuel. Kevin Streelman, 75 to 1 on DraftKings. And Graham McDowell, 110 to 1 on DraftKings.
I like it. You like this. You like Graham McDowell. I heard him a couple of times. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I like it. John, first round leader. Who you like?
I haven't bet them yet, but I'll just rattle off some names that I like. I'm definitely tailing Grillo. He's a coastal elite. Emiliano Grillo is what I always call him. You always play Grillo on the coast, and he has great history here. 80 to 1 is a crazy number for him. I love that. And I'm also going to tail Eugenio, because who knows? He might be the next Mito. And I imagine you're going to get like a 200 to 1 number on him. So why not? I think that's a decent proposition. James Hahn is a guy I always think about for first round leaders. There is a story circling around about Scottie Scheffler shooting a 58 this week, so that's encouraging in a first round leader market, although I don't usually go that low on the list. And also throw out Denny McCarthy's name because he's capable of hitting all of the putts, and he is deep down on the board, so I feel like you can get some good value on him as well.
I like it. For me, I'm looking at Guido Migliozzi at 100 to 1. I think that's just a pretty good number for him for one day. I like Steven Yeager at 90 to 1. Again, I'm just looking at taking some long shots. Obviously, the first round leaders, we're not looking for favorites. I think Brian Stewart at 110 to 1 can be interesting. And my last two plays are Ches Reavie at 90 to 1 and Joel Dahman at 75 to 1. Sia, who are we putting the house on this week?
If you have multiple houses, you're putting multiple houses on the following guys. Okay, so let's start with, I like Emiliano Grillo too. He was actually going to be the breaking news, the super lock, but I only found him at 55 to 1, but that was DraftKings. So clearly what that means is at certain places he's probably getting bet and just hasn't really caught up to FanDuel yet. But Grillo 55 to 1, Chris Kirk 70 to 1, Tom Hogue at 90 to 1, Kyle Stanley 130 to 1. And the breaking news, this is going to surprise you all, at 50 to 1. This is where I want you to put literally everything you have. Try to borrow money from your friends if you can. Tell them, make up a reason, because they're not really going to get it that we're 1,000% on these first round leaders. But make sure you gather all the money you have, parents' money, you name it. Steal if you have to. I mean, honestly, that's probably the way for this tournament. I think that's probably the way to go. Listen, at 50 to 1, your first round leader lock, no question. It's Sergio Garcia. Let's get after it. You're welcome, America.
That's an easy. We knew that was obvious. That's. It's not even stealing. If you do it like they do in Dumb and Dumber, where you give the fun coupon returns, it's not stealing. Right. It's borrowing because you're going to hit this bet and you can give it back right on Sunday.
Yeah. You can talk to him first. Give him an IOU. You just write it out. And I'm a lawyer. That's actually legally binding. That's a true story. I'm licensed in Virginia and Florida. I can tell you, at least in both of those states, it's legally binding. So I'm pretty sure you're good to go. There was going to be Grillo. So just keep that in mind. Grillo, and it might be a tie for first. Grillo and Sergio are definitely your first round leaders, but I think Sergio is probably going to edge him out by one stroke.
I love it. That's it. I mean, we gave you the winners. We gave you the DFS plays. I can't really think of anything else unless, Sia, you might.
Well, first of all, John, PGA Tout, thank you for joining us. You're obviously welcome anytime. Just so you know, the shows don't usually run this long. I kind of had a bit, so we're normally an hour, but I'm sure we'll invite you again. Hopefully you'll come. And dude, we super appreciate the work you put out there. Whenever I think it's Sunday night or Monday morning, we all read it. I think pretty much everybody reads it, and it's such a good baseline to work off of. I definitely think you're one of the minds in this golf world that people really, really respect. And I think there's only a handful of those. I'm not one of them. Spencer's probably one of them. Joel's probably one of them, but there really is a kind of close group of people, I think, that people really kind of lean on, and you're definitely one of them. So thanks for all the content. Thanks for answering all the questions. And God, what did I forget? There's something I forgot.